Yo, just a disclaimer. This podcast is meant for informational purposes only. We are not financial advisors, so please do your own research.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Going Deep with me, AJ Vaynerchuk, and my co-host, Vernon Wells. As we were doing the prep for today, no shortage of topics, both in sports and Web3. So I'll kick it off. Pun not intended, but I guess it worked. NFL's back. Week one was a good one. Interesting weekend. A lot happened with our clients. A lot happened in the league. Vern, what were some of your biggest takeaways from week one?
My Cowboys suck.
That hurt. Yeah, that was tough.
I don't think it's ever good to start a season off with more penalties than points, and possibly nearly as many penalty yards as offensive yards. So that was glorious to watch.
And Dak's out for what, like 6 to 8 weeks or so? They're saying about
6 to 8 weeks. So it's just going to get better from here on out. So
it's always such a gut punch when the team that you love and root for has such a fast, call it, because I'm not going to say that the Cowboys season is over because that would be naive and unfair, but that's such a gut punch right away. Star quarterback hurt, bad loss. Like, I just remember, like, I'll never forget 1999. So growing up a diehard Jet fan, and in 98, they had made the AFC Championship game and had the lead at halftime and lost to John Elway and the Broncos. And then in that offseason, Parcells went out and got a bunch of veterans. And just kind of like, the thing that you do when you feel like you're close, right? You go like what Buffalo did in getting Von Miller. Like, you feel like you have a Super Bowl team, you go out, you get a big-time veteran or two. The Jets brought in guys like Steve Atwater, Eric Baxter, etc. And then first game of the season against the Patriots, Vinny Testaverde, who I know is not Montana, Favre, Elway, but people remember Vinny in that 98 season absolutely lit it up for the Jets. Yeah. And they were rolling. And I forget, second or third quarter, there's a fumble on a handoff, and Vinny sees that there's a fumble and goes to get the ball. And as he plants to kind of like change direction, get the ball, tears his Achilles, and he's done. And the Jets went into a huge downfall. They were like 1-8 that year to start. And they actually finished, I think they might have been like 2-8 and finished 8-8. They got hot at the end. It was such a talented team. But without Vinny, just, when you don't have your quarterback, and that was what? That's 23 years ago. And I remember it clear as day and still feel the feeling of like your season's over before it got going.
Yeah, I think week one losses, it is week one losses. I think several of them you look at and there's still a lot of positives to take away from it. But
the quarterback.
But the quarterback getting hurt, and they weren't doing anything when he was in the game because it's just the weapons aren't the same.
No, but week one, you do have to kind of throw out the window. There's so many examples. Like my favorite example to point to when people overreact or underreact or whatever. When Lawyer Malloy left the Patriots and went to the Buffalo Bills in like the mid-2000s, this is right in the middle of the Patriots and Brady being unbelievable. I want to say the Bills beat the Patriots like 30-0 or 31-3, just absolutely blew them out of the building week one, and the Patriots won the Super Bowl, and the Bills missed the playoffs. Like week one, it can be an outlier. So on our client side, really fun, productive week for our clients. Some standout performances off the top of my head. Kirk Cousins and the Vikings look great. Kirk was getting it to Jefferson, and Vikings really dominated that game, and the offense looked good under the new head coach. One of our younger guys, Rashad Weaver, who had pretty much a lost rookie year from injury, had 2 sacks in week one, which was awesome. Our guy, DJ Reed, despite the Jets not having a great overall performance, he was locked down.
Yeah,
he had a pick. He had a forced fumble. Didn't give up a catch, had a pass breakup. Pro Football Focus's #1 rated corner last week. There was a few more good things that happened, but those are some of the highlights for our client list, which was nice. Jets were not the most exciting performance, so hopefully they can bounce back. Not only do I have DJ there, but I think everybody knows I grew up a diehard Jet fan, so they still hold a place in my heart for sure.
Well, you and I can just hold each other on our losses, and we can console each other and cry on each other's shoulders until
it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're a Jet fan, you're excited for the year. They had a great draft the year before. They had all these high picks this year, made some great free agent signings, including our guy DJ Reed. and then the preseason starts. And in the first quarter of the preseason, the starting quarterback who drafted number 2 overall the year before looks to have torn his ACL. That's what it was, a foregone conclusion. Now it turned out to be not as severe, but he's still out another game or 2 to 3 games.
Yeah.
Similar type of gut punch for all my friends that are Jet fans. Like, you're excited. You're not even trying to be greedy. You're just like, I just want to see progress in the right direction. And boom, young star quarterback out right away. And yeah, my group text, my cell phone was exploding that day, to say the least. What about sticking to sports for another minute? What about the U.S. Open? Did you watch much tennis this last go around?
I did. I enjoyed tennis.
Okay.
Enjoyed playing it and watched a
it?
lot of it.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more. What were some of your takeaways?
Well, obviously starting with Serena. I mean, she's Serena. It was fun to watch her make it as far as she did. It seems like she willed herself to get to that point. And just off of who she is as a player, who she is as a competitor. But my focus was more on the men. Like, the men's matches were really good. And you look at the future of tennis, and you always start to wonder, like, okay, Federer's at the end,
Yeah,
all still doing it, but he's getting close. You have Djokovic, obviously, who's, if he's vaccinated, he'd be in this tournament, and you never know what would happen. But the future of tennis looks bright.
No, absolutely. I would say this was maybe the most engaged I've been with tennis. I've always been like a very casual fan. I'll watch, a final for any of the majors. My wife and I like it. We go once a year to the U.S. Open. It's right in our backyard. But then this year was pretty awesome because we had the VaynerSports Pass event there, and we got, for lack of a better term, super fucking lucky because the suite that we got for the day and the night was the Friday in which Serena played her last match. So, like, being in the suite with those holders, our community, and getting, like, the stadium was electric. And then I think the other cool thing too is you were just saying it and saying it right. Tennis is in a fun spot from the men's side in the sense that you've got probably the need. I would say, and I'm not qualified to say this, so take it with a grain of salt. I'll take this as somebody that is a sports fan and is deep into sports, but is not necessarily the deepest into tennis. I feel like it almost couldn't have gone better for tennis this weekend or this past tournament because they needed somebody like Alcaraz to win, in my opinion. Federer, Joker, Nadal, Murray, like, they need the 19-year-old Spaniard that was ranked 3 that finally got off the hump. I think now, while Kyrgios isn't necessarily a young buck, he's 27, so young but not young as somebody like a Sinner or Alcaraz or some of these others. But I think it seems like Kyrgios might be taking tennis a little bit more seriously. I think he seemed a little bit more locked in, even in his interviews. I just think there's like he might have had, and I don't know, but almost like a light bulb moment of like, all right, you know what? I'm 27. I'm talented enough to win one of these things. Maybe I need to lock in a tiny bit more. So that was cool to see from him. I was bummed when he lost. Rude looked good. Sinner is strong. What's he ranked now? You got Sinner ranked at, what's Sinner these days? He's 11th, and he beat Alcaraz at the major last time out. So I think tennis desperately needs on the men's side a youth infusion. I don't even know how am I even. Tiafoe was humongous.
He was awesome.
He was awesome, and just watching him and how he fed off the crowd, and how young is Francis? Let's see, he's 24. Yeah, I think this was a huge tournament for men's tennis between Tiafoe, Alcaraz, even Sinner making some push, Rude getting up there. Not that I don't love Nadal and Federer and those guys, but those guys are clearly on the second half, rounding the bases towards the end of their career. And I think it was big to get some, and Coco made a good push on the women's side. Like, the youth is important for that sport. And I think there was a big push there.
Oh, for sure. And you bring up Rude. I watched his semifinal match, and he was flat out dominant. His forehand, I thought, like, watching him, I'm like, there's no way this dude can get beat. If they allow him to get to his forehand, it's that powerful. And then Alcaraz is just he had no problem with him. Like it was contested there towards the end, just because they didn't want to give in. But Alcaraz, he impressed me a lot. And I obviously then finding out he's 19 years old. He could have a few majors by the end of his career.
Yeah, I mean, you got Alcaraz at ranked number 1 at 19, Ruud at 2 at 23, Medvedev's at 4 at 26, Zverev is 25. I actually don't know. Again, I'm not the best tennis fan. Stefanos Tsitsipas, I butchered that. I apologize to Stefanos.
So that's a really easy thing to do in tennis. Like some of these names pop on the screen, and I'm like, I don't even know.
By the way, I take pride because people butcher my last name, and my last name being of Belarusian, Eastern European descent. I try to be good, but Tsitsipas, I apologize. But you got Sinner at 21 at ranked 11. Like, hopefully there's a push here. So that's big. Let's do one more thing before we get today's guest, Jacob Trouba, captain of the Rangers, VaynerSports pass holder, might I add. Jacob Trouba, we'll come to him in a second. Let's talk about, did you see that Starbucks made an announcement?
I did.
Partnership with Polygon. What are your initial thoughts about hearing that?
Well, I think as you start to, this thing continues to unfold, you start to see these more major companies getting involved in the Web3 space. Like it's almost daily. There's news of another one, and it just speaks to everything you guys have been talking about for the last few years. This is where things are going. And I've mentioned this before in the podcast. I hadn't listened in the past to some of the things you guys have said. I now am listening intently to everything that comes out of y'all's mouths. And every day it seems to further your points. So this is just another instance of that.
Yeah, I was hyped to see it because I think big brands coming in is big just to get the mainstream involved. And what I was particularly excited about with Starbucks that I give them credit for is that I think their project, at least from what I've been able to read, is really focused on leveraging the blockchain in a way that I'm excited for the blockchain to exist, in the sense that, from my understanding, their focus with their NFT work is around a loyalty program. And I've long thought that blockchain meeting loyalty program is absolutely a win in terms of, whether you're a season ticket holder for the Rangers or the Yankees or, Manchester United, or you get Starbucks every day, or hotel loyalty programs or airline loyalty programs. I think the blockchain is an incredible platform for stronger loyalty programs that actually have the ability to live generation to there could be legacy, kind of like, I think if you try to sign up and become a Packers season ticket holder, it's like a 23-year wait or something like that. Right. I think the blockchain is incredible for consumer loyalty and branching that loyalty to future generations or friends and family. And so not only am I excited that a name brand like Starbucks is getting into space, but I'm hopeful. I'm really rooting for them to pull it off, because I think what consumers need is actual real life utility from the blockchain, the NFTs, to change their perception away from the lazy, gimmicky perception that I think Web3 has for most people.
Well, I think it gives kind of the outsider something tangible. Like I think people need to, in order to be able to understand the space, kind of have to meet them in the middle of, okay, this is the world I'm used to, and this is where the world is going. You gotta kind of give them a little something to get to what that final product is, and I think that's a great way of doing it.
100%. I mean, honestly, not to toot our own horn, but I think that's an initiative and the effort behind VaynerSports Pass too, right? Where I have a lot of people that are normal people that struggle with Bored Ape Yacht Club or Doodles or whatever. But when I talk to them about VaynerSports Pass, if they're a sports fan, I say, hey, by owning this, it gets you access to athletes, experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, that I understand. That's cool. And so to your point, I agree with you. And I think Starbucks is making a great step towards that. And so I'm excited by it.
Yeah. And obviously over the last couple of weeks, you have been balls to the wall when it comes to the black card and the reception from it, the things that are coming out of it, the drops that people are getting, it's impressive. So
I appreciate
kudos
that,
to you. Yeah,
we're trying, me and the team, we're trying out here. No, I appreciate that. And it's exciting times for sure. So with that, let's pivot. Let's bring on our guest, Jacob Trouba, as I mentioned, captain of the New York Rangers, somebody that I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the last couple of months, playing some golf with, which I'm excited to talk about. And yeah, let's bring him on. So Jacob, man, welcome. And thanks for doing the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's get you introduced a bit to everybody listening. You grew up in Michigan. From what I know about Michigan, I haven't spent a lot of time there, but hockey's a big part of that culture. And I went to Boston University, big hockey school on that front. I always remembered it was basically like the New England area and that Michigan, Minnesota area are like really the U.S. based kind of hockey powerhouses. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Michigan, and was it love at first sight? Did you grow up with a stick in your hand? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yes, well, growing up, it was a lot of Michigan, Chicago, not as much Boston for us, just because Chicago and Toronto were always closer. Those we could just drive. So a lot of our tournaments were Chicago, Detroit. Toronto was a lot of the traveling I did as a young kid. But I got a kind of different story, I'd say, growing up with hockey. Okay. No one ever played hockey in my family. Neither my parents. My dad never skated. And my older brother, he's 2 years older than me, wanted to go with one of his friends to skate. My dad was like, "Yep, you're coming. Like, you're going to try this thing out." And I absolutely hated it. I was crying the whole time. There's a video of me. I was probably 4 or 5 at the time.
Okay.
And there's a video of me, like my head would pop over the boards and then I'd fall right down, pop up, fall right down. I was crying, and my dad's like, "You got to make one lap around and see if you like it." And by the end, I wasn't completely crying. But got off and ended up playing with my older brother's team, just house hockey, whatever, in Rochester, and it kind of just went from there. And I never really thought much of it. I always enjoyed playing, had fun. That was always my parents' thing, was to have fun, and whatever happens. There was nothing really expected out of it. And probably around 5th grade, I never thought I was really any great. I was a little overweight, and I was getting lapped on a lot of things. Wasn't the greatest skater. And then around 5th grade, teams started kind of calling for me to come play travel hockey and whatnot, and kind of found my way through there and ended up playing for a team in Plymouth called CompuWare. And that was a pretty big commitment at the time, because it was basically an hour drive for my parents 3 times a week, which was a pretty substantial commitment for them, which I'm very thankful for. And then I kind of just started progressing and getting better, and still didn't really think anything of it. Thought maybe I could go to college and maybe get a scholarship. And then 8th grade, Michigan asked me to come take a visit, and that was kind of where my eyes opened, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'm actually decent at this thing and could make something out of it." But it's always just been a fun thing, and I mean, it's kind of cliche to say now, but still to this day, it's when I stop having fun, I'll go get a real job and do something else.
Now,
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
When it comes to at some point the dream ends. But hockey is it's a different game. It's physical. I kind of liken. I mean, especially someone like you who's a hard hitter and goes after people and gets after it. But you off the ice seem kind and emotional and just a loving person. How do you switch? I mean, are you more like MMA, like you can just go crazy at one point and be normal and on others, or where do you pull from?
I'm not. As weird as it sounds, I'm pretty calm on the ice. Like, I've found that when I get too hot-headed at a young age, when I would get too like fired up and start running around trying to hit people, whatever, I wasn't any good. So even like when the hits happen or whatever throughout the course of the season, like I'm pretty calm in the moment. Like I'm not too fired up, screaming, yelling. There's times I get like that, but usually not. It's just kind of always been a part of how I play, I guess. It's growing up, I was bigger as a kid. Like I said, I was a little overweight. And then kind of everybody went through puberty and passed me up, and then I was kind of smaller, and then I went through puberty later and kind of passed everyone up again, and that was when things kind of started turning for me, I guess. But yeah, funny story is one of my wife's best friends who's in New York. We hang out with her all the time. We met her, she knew her before college, but I met her in college. And she was showing her grandma was watching a playoff game or something last year and was like trying to explain that I was nice and like we hang out and she watched the game and like at one point she turned to her, he's like, he doesn't seem very nice. Like, I'm not sure you should be hanging out with him. So she told my wife and we laughed about it, but yeah, it's funny. It's definitely put on a helmet and go do a job and get off the ice and be yourself and be a good human.
Oh yeah.
Back to your story earlier, you know, I've spent a lot of time with professional athletes, and I'm always curious about like that upbringing and the path towards, you know, becoming a professional. And, you know, the way you described it actually reminds me of a conversation I had with one of our baseball players, a guy named Luke Jackson with the Braves. And he was telling me a semi-similar story of like, yeah, I did it. Like my brother was playing, so I did it. And, you know, I never really thought I was going to play in the league, and maybe I'd go to very similar to how you described it. And I was like, wait, like, what were you throwing in high school? I was like throwing like 95. I'm like, you were throwing 95 at 17. Like, so same kind of question for you, Jacob. Like, are you really humble, or were you delusional, or were you lost? Like, how are you getting an invite to Michigan, but like not realizing you were good? Did you like, what stemmed from that? Was your brother or his friends better? Did you always play up? Like, how does somebody get invited to Michigan and doesn't realize that they got it like you have it?
Early on, I always played up with my brother, and that was
Yeah.
big. It was more just because they were making one trip to the rink,
Right,
so I was going to be on that team. That was a huge part for me, for sure, playing with older players at a young age, and then just found my way back. But that's one thing I always tell when I talk to whoever younger kids. They ask me, was kind of be naive to how good you are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think you're that great. You might be really good, but the guys who were really good when we were 16, 17 aren't playing hockey anymore, and the guys who make it have different paths, and there's no set answer to how you get there, and everyone kind of just takes their own journey, and that was just kind of how mine unfolded, because I didn't grow up thinking hockey all the time, and this is a conversation. My dad, we'd always have conversations in the car driving to and from practice, and I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I think I was 15, 16. I was in high school, and I still wanted to play in the NHL, and like my dad knew that, and so he gave me kind of a breakdown. He wasn't like discouraging me or anything, but he's like, you know how many people like make it to the NHL, and like how many jobs open up each year with guys retiring and phasing out of the league or whatever it may be, and then you dwindle that down to defensemen. Like you got to be like the 0.0001% if you think like this is what you want to do. And I didn't say this to him, but in my head I was like, yeah, Dad, don't worry, I got it. But that was just kind of a funny story. I think he.
So do you think it was your parents? Yeah, was it your parents that kind of drove like a humble aspect of like, don't buy your own hype, don't put the cart before the horse?
I think so. And they never really let me buy into it. Like agents come around pretty early in hockey, even earlier now. And my dad basically shielded everyone away from me, not for his own good, but he's like, you know, talk to them when you're 18 and you want to make a decision of what you want to do, or 17, 18, whatever it was. And when that time came, he kind of vetted who he thought I should meet with, and we sat down with, I think it was 4 or 5, and he's like, all right, you pick from here. Like, these are all good guys. Like, this is your choice, your future. You make your decision. But I'm pretty thankful for a lot of the stuff he did to not let anything go to my head and just let me be a kid and grow up, and I'm real thankful for that now.
You made a really good point in that, and something that should probably get talked about more when it comes to youth sports now. And it's almost become a business in a lot of phases, especially in baseball. I'm sure hockey, it's kind of the same, but you don't know what you're going to be at 8, 9 years old. I didn't know what I was going to be at 11, 12 years old. I had 3, 4 kids better than me on my 12U team. And it wasn't until I started to mature and started to understand what my body was going to do and what I was physically capable of doing before I became a person who could even think about playing professional sports. So it's first and foremost, the same thing your dad was preaching was have fun, like enjoy what you're doing. And if you're good enough to play at that next level, whether it be college and then professionally, that'll show, but you have to enjoy what you do. And I think that's something that if you're successful as you are, you got to enjoy it. You got to have fun and obviously be really good at it. But being humble is that confidence and I always tell people, you got to kind of walk that line between cockiness and confidence.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I fully know I'm the best player on this ice or field, but outwardly, I would just show that I'm one of the guys. But inwardly, there's no one that can stop me. Or
Yeah,
in your case, I'll just go through you.
I think growing up, my brothers would give you a different answer on my arrogance versus my friends and people outside. But yeah, at home, I would definitely not shy of confidence. But that's being comfortable at home, and they all understand me and get me. But yeah, they would give you a different answer on that than a lot of my friends.
How many siblings do you have?
I have two. I have an older brother and a younger brother. My
So you're in the
older
middle.
one stopped playing. Yeah, he stopped playing when he was in ninth grade.
Mhm.
He played football and baseball in high school, and then my little brother just stopped 2 years ago. He played in juniors in Johnstown, and he coached there last year, and he's kind of finding his way now. But I think he's done playing as well.
Got it. What about you were drafted at a very highly at a young age. Like, what was similar to Vernon, by the way. What were you, like 19, Jacob, when you got drafted? How old were you when you got? You were 18.
18,
Vernon, you were 18, right?
I was 18, yeah.
And then you were both top 10 picks, yeah. Yeah. So
Yep.
to that point, like I've heard Vernon talk about it. What's it like being 18 and being a top 10 pick in the NHL? Like, what was that? What was draft night like for you? How was it carrying like that badge of honor with like your friends and your family? Like, what was that experience?
It was. I remember it. It was fun spending it with my family. I had a lot. My dad's side of the family does a trip every year, and the trip was the draft. So a lot of my aunts and uncles on that side were there, and cousins. So I had a big supportive family there. Just the day was kind of a whirlwind. Obviously, you're nervous. You don't know exactly where you're going to end up and what's going to happen. Once it happened, I think the message was like, this is now a start more than a finish. I feel like a lot of people view it as I want to get drafted. But you have to realize the draft is now a start of a new chapter, not really a closure of the last or reaching a goal you wanted to achieve. So I didn't really think too much into it. I kind of went home and went back to my house with my parents and was the same person. I think I found that time and again after you accomplish something or do something, you come home and you're the same person you were 3 hours ago before it happened. So, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a fun day. And then going into school, obviously you have that on you, but that never really bothered me, I would say.
What month is the hockey draft?
July, June or July, late June.
So,
I think.
So did you get drafted right after you graduated high school?
Yeah, everybody's entered into the draft at 18 for hockey.
Got it.
So I got drafted I went to the development program
but
last 2 years.
But hypothetically, you could be, because sometimes hockey, I've seen this and I've read about this, like you might have a kid that's a 19-year-old senior, for example, right? Is it you have to be out of high school or you have to be 18? Do you know?
You have to be 18, and then you kind of can shuffle around leagues from there. Like there's a lot of different paths to go.
I'm thinking about it more from like the perspective of like you didn't go back into class the next day and see your fellow high school classmates, right? Because
no, it would have been after graduating.
Got it.
And then going to college is usually, or guys go back to junior, go to junior, go back to somewhere.
Right.
And there's a lot of different routes you can take in hockey.
Got it. And then you made your debut in the NHL really young too, yeah?
Yep. So I went to Michigan for a year and loved it. And there was always the talk of going to play in Canada and going to college. I always wanted to go to college. Grew up in Michigan. And Red Berenson was my coach there. He was a legendary hockey coach. And he always told me, he's like, hey, when you're ready to go, like, I'm not stopping you. Like, I'll drive you to the airport. And I wanted to stay a second year, honestly. And everyone's like, you should go. And I'm like, I'm having a great time here. Like, I want to keep going here. And I went from an end of the year meeting with him, and he's like, you should definitely go. And that was kind of the thing that pushed me over the ledge, because you never really know. Like, I didn't want to leave and play in the minors. I'd rather play in college if that was the case. And you never really know what that jump is until you do it. And it's kind of a leap of faith. And he was the one who kind of gave me the nudge that pushed me over the edge of like, this guy believes I can do this. Like, now's my time. Let's do it.
So being in New York, professional sports teams are a big deal in New York. Passionate fans. When you have a C on your chest,
That is a special thing, especially being in New York. How have you been able to handle that? Has it been extra pressure on you, knowing that you're in the same boat as the captain himself, Derek Jeter? Like when it comes to music?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. I've definitely enjoyed the summer. I think there are going to be some challenges ahead for sure when the season starts up. But same thing as I've kind of said before is went home and I was hanging out with my wife and dogs as the same guy I was when I woke up before it happened. And that's the kind of thing I've heard from people I've talked to, whether it's business people or former athletes, is you don't need to reinvent yourself. You don't need to change yourself. Like there's a reason this happened. It's because you are who you are. And that's kind of the biggest thing. Like I'm still going to lean on the other guys on the team. I've talked with them. Like not much is going to really change. Like I'm not going to show up tomorrow and be a new person. Like I'm going to be myself, be true to myself, and I'm going to need help. I'm going to ask guys for help. I'm going to lean on other guys, and that's kind of how we operated last year. And I don't see much reason to change it this year.
Yeah, I think the guys around you would quickly notice the change in who you are, for sure.
And that's the one thing, guys can see through things that are fake pretty easily, especially when you get to this level and guys have been around, they played. Then no one's going to follow that guy. No one's going to really listen, or like you got to be yourself and be true to yourself. And not much is going to change for me, I don't think.
Yeah.
What about off the ice, Jacob? What about do you grow up playing other sports? What are some of your hobbies outside of sports these days?
Yeah, grew up playing pretty much everything. Golf. I played baseball in high school for a year before I had to give that up. Never played football. A lot of golf, baseball, hockey. Now I'm into a lot of different things. Big into watch collecting. Not a lot of people know that, but I like watches. My wife started working this summer, so I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I have a buddy who's an artist has a studio in Brooklyn, so I ventured over there with him a good amount this summer and started a painting. So I have a painting that I did,
Nice.
Which is a little different. That's the New York in me.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that was basically my summer. A lot of golfing, painting, and hanging out. I mean, there's so much to do here and new things pretty much every day. So there's always things coming through here. Like trying to go check out as much as I can.
How's your golf game?
It's okay. It starts out good. And then it kind of, I think about it too much, and then I start working out, and the body gets all out of whack, gets sore, and then the golf game goes south very fast.
Same. I can get locked. Right? I can get locked in for like 9 holes, and then after that, it's just wheels off.
Yep.
It's a demoralizing game. So I had the pleasure. Troubs and I played, I don't know, like a month ago with a couple of buddies. We played Liberty National, which was sick. A friend of ours belongs there, and yeah. Jacob, how much do you play? Because I feel like you could be really, 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 really good if you like practice and played a lot more.
I tried basically probably at least once a week this summer.
Yeah.
Sometimes twice.
Do you ever get out to practice though?
No, that's my problem. 100 yards and in is not good. That's where I spend probably 70% of my strokes.
And that's where that's where you can make up those strokes and score.
So during the pandemic, we had a place in Florida, and we had a golf simulator in the building, and my wife was studying all day for school. And so I would go down there with the dogs and just hit golf balls for like hours. Yeah. And so my game got pretty good then, but same thing. You can't really practice a short game down there, but hitting a ball, I'm decent.
How much do you think is translatable from, shooting a hockey puck? Like, is there any correlation with the hand-eye or the hips, or how much do you kind of?
The hips, yeah. I mean, it emulates a slap shot pretty closely with the hip turn and transition, but I wouldn't say hands are my specialty, so that doesn't doesn't help me around the greens.
Right. So, but more like off the tee or longer woods, like you're getting a lot swing of that distance from that torque from the hockey.
I think so. It's just a familiar motion for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Vernon, would you say the same? Because I might be the only person in the world that has seen both of you hit a golf ball. So I'm highly qualified. I mean, Vernon, you murder the ball as well. Both of you murder the ball. But is it that hip from the baseball swing, home run swing? Like, is that a similar type of thing that translates?
Unfortunately, in my swing, yes, which means the ball can go anywhere it wants to at any given point. But yeah, I think we've we've been so used to hitting an object with a stick that it's just a different way of doing it, and figure out what looks right and try to emulate other golf swings. And then at that point, just try to hit the ball as far as I can. So I'm kind of in the same boat as you. When I get around the green, I could be good, or I could be another 100 yards on the other side of it, just depending on how I catch it.
That's how it goes for me.
Yeah.
Where's your favorite course you've ever played?
Ooh, ever played? I was lucky enough to play Wingfoot a couple of times this summer. That's just the history and how hard the course is without having water. You rarely lose a ball out there, but somehow you're shooting high 80s. It's like tough to get low 80s for me. Yeah, greens are hard, and it's not like a tricky course or gimmicky course in any way. So that's a fun one. I like Liberty. That's a really cool spot. Where else? I played Sabonic, a charity thing 2 years ago out in the Hamptons. That was a beautiful place.
Yeah,
those probably top three.
Yeah, I played the other two. I haven't played Sabonic yet, but I've only heard awesome things.
It's a pretty amazing place.
Vern, what about you? You ever get onto a great track before?
Probably the nicest one has been the Madison Club out in California. It's not too many people have ever played it. Somehow we got on it because of Michael Young, and it was one of those courses, like, you kind of look around and it's like, this is everything as green as can be. You can drive literally up to the greens because they just don't care. Like, it's just
it's like a chill.
Yeah, very chill. It was as nice as it can. So I've almost haven't even played since then because everything's been downhill.
It's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's see. What about getting traded? So you were traded from the Jets to the Rangers. I'm always fascinated to hear the story of what's it like to go from one place to another. How do you adapt to the new locker room and all that?
Yeah, I had a bit of an interesting situation, I would say. I think getting drafted to Winnipeg, played there, loved it, loved my teammates, loved the city. My wife practices medicine. She's a doctor now, and she couldn't practice there. And so when it came time, like, do you want to sign long term? I was like, I don't, because I got to get somewhere where we can live together. That was our goal. Our dream was to find our way somewhere where we could both have our careers, which is pretty unique. I would say not a lot of athletes have to navigate that. So there's a lot of whatever in the media with me wanting out and all that. And I think the guys in the room understood. I never felt I was a poor teammate to anybody there, or like I honestly enjoyed my time there. But it wasn't really a secret that I wanted to get traded. And so I ended up getting traded to New York, and it was interesting for sure. Cause I mean, growing up in Michigan, I've never been anywhere like this. I came here on vacation one time as a kid, stayed in Times Square. Shows you how much I know New York. And I just couldn't really wrap my head around not having a car and a garage and walking out my back door and whatever. And so the first year was a big adjustment for sure. I think it took me a long, long time to get comfortable. My wife was in Florida finishing her med school degree, so she wasn't really here. It was just a tough time of adjusting for me. And then pandemic happened, and she's up here, and everything just kind of came together. The last 2 years have been much, much smoother. I feel very comfortable. Love playing here. Love the city. We sold our place in Florida. We're full-time New Yorkers now. I'll stay here as long as I possibly can. This place is probably my favorite place I've ever been in the world. So it's a special thing and not something that I take lightly. And I mean, we wake up days and we're just like, we can't believe that we made it here and we're doing what we've always dreamed of doing. And she's practicing and I'm doing what I want to do, and somehow we're making this thing work, which is great.
Man, that's that doesn't happen very often where two of you can practice and play.
And insanely fortunate that New York ended up being the spot.
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
awesome.
So much opportunity for her here, and obviously I couldn't be happier playing here.
Yeah, New York's a special place, man. We had so I got a chance to play in old Yankee Stadium for years, and guys hated going to New York. It's like, why would you ever hate going to New York? It's like, well, some people are able to deal with fans better than others. Some people are able to just deal with just how many people are there. But from the first day I went to New York to visit and play against, obviously, old Yankee Stadium, and people are crazy and yelling and saying things that just shouldn't be said out loud, which I loved. To walk around the city and just so many different cultures, so many different people, and then finally get a chance to play there for 1 year after being kind of a quiet Yankee fan, even though I had to play against them all my life. It's a special place.
Yeah, there was always, when I was in Winnipeg, this was always one of the first places you'd look at on the calendar when the schedule would come out, is when's the trip to New York. And I mean, it's always great to play. MSG was probably my favorite place to play in as a visitor, and now I get to play here half the years.
Yeah,
pretty special.
Vern, where did you live when you played for the Yankees?
Upper East Side. I was at
Upper East Side.
67th and First, I think is what it was.
Okay, that's your area. Okay.
Yeah.
Troubs, you're a bit of a foodie too. Any restaurant favorites in Manhattan?
Ooh, we've
go-tos?
Found ourselves not leaving our little neighborhood, which is a problem lately. We've just gotten too comfortable going locally around here.
Yeah.
Sushi Zo is one of my favorites in Midtown. A friend took us there early on, and we tried to get back there a decent amount. We end up going to La Conda Verde all the time. It's right down the street from us.
That's a great spot.
There's so many. It's crazy. Early on, before Kelly started working, we tried to try somewhere every week or a couple of weeks, new that we haven't been to. And I mean, some of the experiences are just next level. Yeah. Only get them in New York, food experiences.
There's a funny anecdote I heard a while ago that it's literally physically impossible. If you decide I'm going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a new restaurant every day, if you look at the churn of restaurants in Manhattan, you literally can't do it because there'll be new restaurants closing and opening. Like you'll never you have 3 meals a day at 3 different places in Manhattan. You'll never be able to get them all because they'll just have too much turnover. And
and it seems like there's so many new spots opening like post-pandemic. Like everything's coming back, and there's a lot of new stuff opening right now, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. What about goals for the upcoming season? It's almost time. Like, where's your head at? What are some of the goals that you set for this year?
I think there's a lot of expectations coming into this year that our team will address and talk about, and kind of not live by expectations set by others. I think we're going to try to figure out what makes us tick and what made us successful last year, and pick the things that we want to emulate and build this year. But it's a new year. I mean, we got to turn the page, I think, is step one, and last year's over, and it's time to start fresh game one. We're not in the playoffs. We're not in the Eastern Conference Finals. We're fighting for this thing just to make it to the playoffs, and that's got to be our mindset going into the first game. And I mean, goals, I'm not big on sharing personal goals.
Okay. Don't. Yeah, all good.
Team goals, I think, are decided with everyone. Obviously, we all want to win the Stanley Cup at the end of the day. How we get there, I think, is what we're going to talk about. And personally, I just want to keep growing. I think leadership is something that I've worked on a lot, and I want to continue to get better at. And when I feel like I'm leading by example, I'm usually playing pretty good hockey, and that's when I feel most comfortable. And that's not really a goal, but I want to stay in that mindset and keep that attitude as much as I can throughout the season.
Okay. I have an off-the-wall question for you. And since there's millions of people in New York, and some of them end up in hospitals, craziest story your wife has come home with?
Oh, gosh. In New York or in Florida? She went to med school in Florida. Florida's a different place.
Yeah, Florida's a different place.
Florida man does X. Like, always the head. Let's go Florida. I want to hear.
Let's go Florida.
Or overall. Yeah, Florida.
How graphic do you want to get here?
Keep it like NC-17. Is that one of the things?
Okay,
like,
that's one of them.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be rated G wholesome, but I don't want to.
I'm allowed to tell
I don't want you looking bad either.
least there's no
He had
names
a
attached to it, so we're good.
patient
Right.
in Florida who had gangrene,
Oh.
which is like a flesh-eating
Yeah,
bacteria. Don't look it up, but that's what it is, and it spread crazy areas. And her doctor that she was working under basically handed her a scalpel and was like, "Hey, like start cutting out all the dead tissue, and when we're done, like you got to clean it all out." And they have like it's kind of she describes it as like a suction-y squirt gun. And the doctor left, and she was left there with the patient basically like open, and she's sitting there like cleaning out all his wounds and cuts, and it wasn't good. I think he got. I don't want to get too much detail. I don't want to get her in trouble, but
Yeah.
I think
Was
he
the
got
patient
airlifted
awake?
yeah, I think so. But like he has no feeling, like it's all dead tissue, and like so he doesn't even know what's going on. And I think he got airlifted shortly after to a different unit, and that's the last that she heard.
No,
Yeah, that was an interesting story for her to tell.
Yeah, see, I can't even skate, and I choose hockey over that. So, yeah,
when she comes home some days, I'm like, I'm all good. Like, I've learned if she wants to talk about her day, she knows she can talk about it, but I don't go asking how was work today anymore.
Yeah, you don't want those stories. Ooh, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'll watch. If my wife's watching Grey's Anatomy or any medical show, and there's some like. If I'm watching on TV and somebody comes in with gangrene, I'm kind of like, let me know when it's done. Like, I'm out on that.
Yeah, she has a lot of those. It's medicine. I've learned a lot of medicine too. Like, nothing's really black and white. It's very like try to figure it out and problem solving. She does internal medicine, so she basically gets patients from the ER and has to kind of navigate and figure out what the issue is. And it's because she's good at it, but it's definitely. You have
to be a special type of person to do that type of work, because you look at the three of us and we're all like squirming in our chairs, not even want to talk about it. So kudos to your wife. That's incredible and something I could never do.
Yeah, she's had a couple of monkeypox patients here.
Damn.
So she doesn't give me much detail on those, but she's told me she has. I think she's had two. So
I haven't heard, not to go down that path, but I haven't heard a lot about monkeypox recently. Like, it had a big moment.
Yeah.
I think it hasn't, thankfully, from what I can tell, it hasn't really been spreading like wildfire. So that's probably not hearing much about it.
It's definitely out there.
Oh, yeah. What about, so this is pretty cool. For the VaynerSports Pass listeners, you're actually a holder.
Yes.
You have and recently acquired a double hockey holo. And in the NFT space, is that your first and only? Have you messed around with some others? Like, what's your NFT journey been like?
I was interested early when it was a lot of hype around it and everything. And I understand it. I get it. I didn't buy anything at the time, but I looked around it. That was my first one that I've actually owned. I've looked at some others.
What are you looking at? What's caught your eye? What's interesting you?
I like the fly fish.
Okay, yeah.
I think I want to get one of those to have.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I like more the collaborative ones. Nike did a collaboration with someone. I think you have a couple of them or one of them. Do you not?
Nike. Yeah, no, I do. Are you talking about the Clone X?
Maybe.
Or
Garrett showed me them.
Yeah. So basically, there's a company called Artifact. They were doing these really cool kind of like digital streetwear NFTs a while back. And then Nike bought them for a large sum. Don't know the exact, well, let me phrase. I know the number because, full disclosure, we were investors, but I don't think it's a public number, so I won't say it. And then since then, they've done some cool things. So, like, for example, they just did a drop where their profile picture project is called Clone X. And if you own certain Clone X's, you're able to mint certain digital apparel that you could then redeem for physical. So like sneakers, hoodies, joggers, etc. So
I like NFTs with some sort of tangible along with it. So like obviously you guys do, you get a unique experience.
Yep.
I like more of that, like the restaurant. I'm not
kind of like the intersection between.
I was very interested in Zed Run for a while too.
Yeah.
The horses.
Yeah,
I think that's a really cool business.
Yes, yeah. Are you into horse racing?
Yes and no. Like I would go to the horse track sometimes in Florida with my uncle, but I'm not like an avid follower of horse
I
racing.
gotcha.
I
Well,
enjoy
I mean,
going from time to time.
how many people know horse racing like they know hockey or baseball or football? Like it's got to be a very
there's gotta be
small,
there's some
tight-knit
though for
community.
sure.
No, and by the way, I'm blown away by it because like I like betting ponies. We had the Meadowlands like 45 minutes away from where I grew up. I just did a bachelor party in Saratoga. I like going to a sports book and betting ponies too. Like I like it, and I know how to read the book, to an extent. But I'm always blown away when somebody's like, "Oh, that jockey's won its last 3," or "This horse is the son of that stallion." I'm like, man, that's wild. That's really in it.
The one we go to in Florida has like a little mini like book that we
Mhm.
get, and then they have like the expanded like big ones.
Yep.
I don't even like it's like all their past records or times
Yeah,
or
yeah.
quarter miles or
Yep.
everything is in there, and I'm like, nah, just give me the little book. I'm good. I don't understand.
Give me the odds. Give me the names. Give me their numbers. Make some picks. You should check out this other project. One, I think Zed is still interesting, and I'm a Zed holder and like what they're up to. And then two, there's another project called Silks. I'll text you about it. It's pretty cool because I'm somebody that like when I was like 17, 18, said to myself, hey, if I get to a place where I have some money, I like the idea of like owning a horse instead of betting on a horse, actually having skin in the game. And then when I got some money and looked into it, I'm like, wait a minute. Like housing the horse is expensive, feeding the horse, training the horse.
Taking care of the horse is insane.
Well, and then also like I like to think of myself as a fairly empathetic individual. I also was kind of like, man, like I get a horse, I'm gonna like love this horse, and if it fucking breaks its leg and it has to be put down, like I don't want that. I can't do that. So I hit the eject button on that idea once I looked at the cost and kind of like the emotional attachment. But what Silks is doing is kind of like, think of it as almost like a Dynasty League fantasy sports game where they're actually going to be minting horses in parallel to the real life births. Because when a horse gets born for thoroughbred, it's actually in a registry. And so you can actually like own a horse that's actually a real horse. So you could buy an NFT for this random horse. And then a year or two later, that horse might actually be running Saratoga or the track down in Florida. And there's a model where like if that horse wins the race, you win. And so that's kind of a cool intersection. It kind of speaks to what you're talking about, like
just
real life
fractionalizing the horse.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily fractionalizing because you would actually own it entirely, but there's a metaverse with stables and you would actually stable your horse somewhere and it gets insane. But
I like that idea better than
but it's cool, right? Like those are the constructs that I'm excited for the blockchain to explore. So I feel you. I'm kind of in the same boat. Even though I have participated heavily in the speculative nature of buying art and PFPs, I've always gravitated towards like that real world intersection of stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that is a whole nother world right there. Like it's to think if we're having this discussion like 3 years ago when it comes to horse racing and this is the future of horse racing, we all would have looked at each other and been like, that doesn't even make any sense. Yeah.
100%. You're absolutely right.
But now we're getting to that point. It's exciting. And I think it's anytime we have these conversations about NFTs and I'm on a chat with these guys, so I just sit back and read about everything that they're talking about and the way they're talking about it. And most of it's over my head, but it's so educational to know that this is what the future is. So you better start to truly understand it.
I'm definitely in the learning mode still. Like there's a lot of catching up for me to do on it, but it's still relatively new too. Like it's, it's got a ways to go, I think.
Oh yeah,
it does. Let's wrap here in a moment. But one question I want to ask you, that's just kind of like a fun one within the community. We ask everybody that comes on the sports side. What is your favorite fast food joint?
One thing that there is no fast food in New York, really. Like I rarely find myself going to fast food here anymore.
Growing up,
I was a big
college.
Like hockey tournaments was always Jimmy John's.
Jimmy John's, okay.
If that counts as fast food.
Yeah, I think that counts.
Jimmy John's and Subway was like you have 3 games in a day, like in between each game you eat a sub. That was kind of what I did growing up. Hockey tournaments, I felt like was a lot of.
I'll take the Jimmy John's answer. I like it too because I'm fairly sure that's we've probably asked like 20 athletes so far, and I think it's the first Jimmy John's answer.
First Jimmy John's?
Yeah, I think it's the first one, so I definitely want to count it based on that.
Yeah, I did eat a lot of fast food as a kid. But yeah, Jimmy John's would be my go-to.
Okay.
All right, what's your favorite sport outside of hockey?
To play?
Or to watch?
To watch? To play, definitely golf, just because it's something that I'll never be as good as I want to be at, I don't think.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me coming back. To watch, probably football to watch. I just think I watch football with like buddies who play football and like they understand defenses and what like they're trying to accomplish. I don't watch it and I don't understand it that well.
Right.
But I do like watching football. I think the diversity of the athlete on the field is crazy to me. Like you have a guy who's 6'4", like 300 pounds running like a sprint like 3 times faster than I can run it. And then you have wide receivers who are flying around. I don't know. It's just a very unique sport, and that there's so many different types of players.
Yeah, and I don't think you guys get enough credit for how athletic you guys are, and how physically demanding playing your sport is. Like I've seen you guys behind the scenes and the work that it takes, and it's amazing. So I wish more people would truly understand what it takes to be a professional hockey player.
It can be hard at times. Like when you're dealing with injuries, I think is when it's the hardest, and you're trying to play through something, and you can either stop and it gets better, but you can't play for 3 weeks, or you kind of grind through it and maybe it takes 6 weeks to get better. And that's a lot of guys take the 6 week. I would say almost every guy takes the 6 week route, and nobody knows, but that's not an easy thing to grind through.
No doubt.
Makes perfect sense. Well, listen, brother, appreciate you stopping by and jamming with us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate you being a member of the VaynerSports Pass community as well. So this was great.
I love it. Love it. All right. Thank you, guys.
Cool, man.
All right,
Appreciate
have a good
it.
season.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Going Deep. To learn more about VaynerSports Pass, please follow us on Twitter @VSPass. Also, don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.